And hello, everyone. Training camp is finally here, and I cannot be more excited, Jets fans. It's been a long time coming, but we are finally beginning the campaign for the 2022 season. The New York Jets arriving in Florham Park yesterday, and boy, there's a lot to talk about, especially after the first day. Hello, everyone, and this is Rich Sports Talk. I'm your host, Nolan Rich. Thank you so much for joining us here on the program today. As always, really appreciate you guys reaching out last night with the poll. I was asking, did you want me to talk about the training camp last night or today? You guys voted for today. I apologize, it's a little bit later than usual, but no matter, we're going to get right into it. And there was a lot to come out with yesterday, and both some big headlines, some underrated headlines, but one of the biggest positions that I've talked about this entire offseason. For those of you joining us here after the live stream, please make sure to subscribe and put your comments below to hear what you have to say. But the biggest talking point for me, or one of them, has been this offseason, has been the tackle position. It has become kind of a polarizing topic among Jet fans, and it once again was at the forefront yesterday for the New York Jets. There's a couple pieces for this, so let's start off with Makai Bechten. Now, there's a couple things with Makai Bechten yesterday, and of course, there's another big piece of news related to Makai Bechten, which we'll get to in a second. But the biggest thing this offseason outside of building this roster has been what I can only describe as the interesting situation going on with Makai Bechten. I mean, I've never really seen a situation where you've had a player basically almost by a coaching staff be pressured into losing weight. I've never really seen that in the NFL before. But to Makai's credit, showed up in camp looking a lot healthier, looking a lot thinner, and looking a lot leaner. And you could tell Robert Saleh was very thrilled about that. Now, I did see some comments too on previous videos saying that, look, why are you hating on Makai Bechten? Why are you being so hard on Bechten? And look, I've been a proponent of, look, I want Makai Bechten to be great. I think Makai Bechten needs to be a big part of this team. But it was concerning that this coaching staff had to get on him that hard in order to lose weight, in order to get into playing shape by their estimation. And look, Makai Bechten, I give him a lot of credit. Looks really good, looks really lean. But I will also say, and I know a lot of people are going to probably jump on me in the comments too, is even though Makai Bechten looks great, and I have to give him all the credit in the world for getting in shape, we still have to see how he looks on the field, both in training camp and also in the preseason, because there's one thing about looking in great shape and actually being in great shape. And the other thing, too, is for as well as Makai Becton has done getting into shape, the Jets made a decision yesterday, which in some of the reasons I really respect, but I think it's also very telling. And that was that Robert Saleh basically came out and said, we are moving Mekhi Becton to right tackle. George Fant's going to be our left tackle. And this is a move that I really like because I feel Fant played really well at the left tackle position last year. He was really comfortable at that position. But there's a lot of little factors that kind of are a bit alarming. And again, I'm starting to see some chats come in, guys. Chat's always open. As always, I'd love to hear what you guys have to say. But while I do think this is the right move for the Jets, and Mekhi Becton, of course, was very positive about the move, saying that he just wants to be a star and wants to contribute on the field. To me, it's still a bit telling where we came into this camp believing that this was going to be a competition, that this was going to be a competition between George Fant and Mekhi Becton to see who was going to earn the left tackle spot. And basically, the person that didn't win the left tackle spot was going to become the right tackle. Now, Saleh has said that that's not the case. Becton's going to be the right tackle. So, on the one hand, I think it's a very good move because it dispels distraction. It dispels the, well, who's going to win the left tackle position? Like, it clears up a lot of things, which I think was smart. But I also believe it's very telling that the Jets have already made this decision to move Becton to right tackle because I actually think Becton can be a better right tackle than a left tackle. He's a better run blocker at this point than a pass blocker. I think you pair him with Elijah Tucker. That can be a very, very good dynamic duo on that side, especially if Becton can stay healthy and live up to his potential. But the thing that concerns me, though, is we have to wonder if this is already feeling like a bit of a disappointment with Becton, because if we can rewind the clocks back to the draft, the reason that the Jets drafted Makai Bechten was they envisioned him as a left tackle. And that is the reason why this team selected Makai Bechten over Tristan Wirfs. Because Tristan Wirfs, they felt, could be a great right tackle. And he has. He's been a Pro Bowl tackle in Tampa Bay. Now, I do think it helps that you have Tom Brady and that great offensive line. But to Wirfs' credit, he's been an unbelievable offensive lineman. So now that the fact that we're in year 3 and Becton is moving to the right tackle position, and I understand that Saleh said he left the door open, but I have a little bit more of a comment on that in a second, and I will get to that in a second. But it does feel kind of disappointing that the Jets, if they wanted a great right tackle, they could have had potentially Tristan Wirfs, and Wirfs has been an unbelievable player. So in some regards, almost a bit disappointing where you envisioned you were getting this amazing left tackle. And look, I'm not saying Makai Becton is by any stretch of the imagination a bust at this point, but you do wonder if there's feelings from Joe Douglas, from this front office, of just a little bit of disappointed that this guy's already having to move to the right tackle position. So, but overall, I think it's the better position for him this year. Play the right tackle position in college. Again, you're still going to have to face great pass rushers at the right tackle position. It doesn't matter left or right tackle, but it does help a little bit. And look, Fant last year was really good at left tackle. But another interesting factor, too, was Saleh did say that Becton playing left tackle isn't off the table. But someone that's close to the Jets, that's not directly in the Jets organization, did have something very interesting to say. Lejay Douzable, who I feel is a very good analyst and someone that does have a lot of connections within that Jets building and within the Jets organization, tweeted yesterday basically saying he expects a George Fant extension to come soon. So even though Saleh is saying that they believe that Becton could potentially be a left tackle, if that's the case, why are you looking at an extension for George Fant after you just announced him to be the left tackle? And that's one of the reasons, too, why people have been saying, like, well, why hasn't George Fant been given a contract extension yet? Because it seems like the Jets have wanted to give him a contract extension. Well, I think that this was the very big reason. And now, if he does get an extension, it's going to be very clear why. Because there's a very big distinction between being a left tackle and a right tackle in the NFL. The average salary for the top 5, top 10 players at each position, there's about a $3 million difference between being a left tackle and a right tackle annually. Now, what I believe the Jets are going to look to do is do a contract similar to what I call the Joe Douglas special, which you saw with Carl Lawson, you saw it with Corey Davis. They're going to probably look to give him a 3-year extension, front load the deal, but leave it so that if they need to get out in year 3, they can do that. And also it gives George Fant another chance to potentially dip and get another contract when he's in his mid-30s. Again, probably won't be as lucrative, but still could probably get a very good chunk of change at that point. So to me, it's very telling. Like, again, Robert Saleh, I always say actions speak louder than words, where you're telling me that you believe Becton could potentially be the future left tackle, but you've already announced that Fant's going to be the left tackle to start the season. And on top of that, we're hearing rumblings that Fant gets an extension. And look, this is good for the Jets in a regard too, because I really do like Fant. I know the injuries do concern me, some of his history, but I do believe he's an underrated left tackle. Like, he reminds me a lot of a DeBrickashaw Ferguson in the sense of his style of play. Is he going to be considered one of the elite left tackles? No, but when he's out there on the field, you don't have to worry about it. You know he's going to be consistent. That, to me, is what he reminds me of in terms of his playing style. But I do think it was very telling that you look yesterday, like, that's not to say Becton can't go back to the left tackle position. I mean, the big thing now is to go out there and see if he can stay healthy. And for Becton, if he can go out there and dominate the right tackle, Elijah Vera Tucker's a great run blocker, and you also have Becton. Like, running the football on the right side of the Jets could be a lot of fun this year. It could be a lot of excitement, especially for Brees Hall, Michael Carter, Tevin Coleman. I mean, this could be very fun. But again, the biggest thing for Becton is he does look in incredible shape, and I have to give him all the credit in the world. But can he stay healthy? If he can stay healthy for, I'm not even saying 17 games, conservatively, if he can be on the field for 14 games this year, that is going to be absolutely huge for this team. So we got the comment section lighting up. I'm going to get to the questions right now. And again, if you're joining us after, make sure to comment on the video below, and I will get to your comments and questions in a future video. Daquan Jones, sorry about that. Daquan, Becton Hurdle is consistency to me on the field. He's good to great. The line should be solid now, though. Nick Chaplin, let's hope training camp doesn't lead to injuries to star players who are injury prone. Absolutely agree. I mean, that was the biggest thing last year. The Jets, that was the biggest thing with the training camp last year, which I do think impacted last year's season, where you had injuries, but injuries to key pieces. Obviously, Carl Lawson and some of the pass rushers, but one of the more underrated injuries last year to me was Elijah Moore. And really, the players I want to see the healthiest in this training camp are the rookies, because with the training camp system now, there's less practices, there's less reps, there's even less preseason games. So every single rep for these young players is valuable to not only learn the playbook, not only learn the scheme, but get used to the speed of the NFL game. And last year, you saw it with Elijah Moore when he went down in training camp last year, missed a couple of days, and his start of the season was very slow. But you look at when he started to pick it up, it seemed about right where he got about game 3 or game 4 after missing most of the training camp. So it's a situation, too, where the reps are so important. There's so few that you need to get as many as possible. So you need, especially the young guys, to get as many reps as possible. Daquan, I like Fant on the left tackle spot. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. Completely agree. I thought Fant did an unbelievable job last year. The thing that's really impressed me so far is everyone's minds have noticeably different than previous years. Brandon, would love to get a little bit more insight on that, like in terms of what you are talking about with the mindset. BK, isn't this mostly that he hasn't played in a year and Fant earned the job? That's a good point, BK. You could go that route. A part of me also wonders too, do they feel it will be less strain on Becton playing the right tackle position, because you're also not usually going against the team's best pass rusher at the right tackle position. It's a little bit less wear. Like, I could see that potentially being the reason. And look, I think the coaching staff, they love Fant. I mean, they've basically been known how much they love George Fant, how much they really value his leadership, how much they really love him as a player, how he played last season. So I do think that's an interesting point too, is because of how he played last year at the left tackle position, do the Jets just want to eliminate a variable at the left tackle position? Like, yeah, even if Becton is healthy, you're not exactly sure how he's going to play at the left tackle position early. It will be interesting to see where Becton grades out against Wirfs this year. Nothing stopped him Becton being a top 5 right tackle. Will tell. Time will tell. So, Brain, the biggest thing for me is it's going to be the health. Can he stay healthy? And it's not only the health. Like, one of the biggest things I keep saying with being in shape for Becton wasn't also the health. It was, can he be consistent play in and play out? Because there was a lot of times in his rookie year too where you did see him come off the field for like a play or two to get a breath. You could tell there were times that he was absolutely gassed. So you need him to be out on that field, and you need him to be consistent every single rep. Now, he does have the talent to be, especially with his build, he could be easily, if he can stay healthy and put all of his potential together, he could be one of the most dominant right tackles in football. There's no question about that. The big question is, can he stay healthy and produce consistently? Nick Chapman, the Titans will really help Zach that we didn't have last year. The addition of these studs will help the line out and give Zach more time to throw. I do think that is something, because, again, the Jets like to do a lot of the heavy tight end sets. They like to bring in the extra tight ends. They also add some fullbacks this year too, which I do think will help. And they've added more playmakers too. I mean, the one thing too, which also helps the offensive line, if you have guys that can get open and you have guys that can get open quickly, you can get the ball out quicker, and that helps alleviate the pass rush as well. I mean, you do see the system is designed to try to get a lot of the quick passes. It's designed to get a lot of yak yards. Like a lot of the guys the Jets have been bringing in, like the Garrett Wilson, Elijah Moore, those are guys who are great route runners, but really they make plays in space. Like you want to get the ball in their hands because they can take something like a 5 yard slant or a quick out and they can make it into a big play. And that is something that's really important. And that is something that is really undervalued. Um, Fant was one of JD's first free agent signings, if I remember correctly. He has outperformed all the expectations people had on him when he left the Seahawks. Yeah, and Katie brings up a great point. I mean, Fant has really proven a lot of players wrong and a lot of fans wrong because I do remember at the time when Fant was signed, there was a lot of people, especially Jet fans, that did not like the signing because you have to remember where Fant was coming from. Seattle had this notion that they did not have a good offensive line. Fant was struggling to get on the field, and the Jets paid him a good amount of money. I mean, I would say in the grand scheme of things, Fant has lived up to that contract. But you also look too, like this is a player that is an ascending still player, even despite his age, because he didn't get a lot of reps in Seattle. But it was a gamble. I mean, it was one of those signings which was really a gamble for Joe Douglas. It was one of those kind of out of the box signings, and really it's worked out very well. In a few years, Becton's value could be through the roof, elite and versatile. Like it all comes down to health, Braden. Like it comes down to can he stay healthy? Because you're not becoming an all pro, you're not becoming a pro bowler, you're not becoming a top 5 right tackle or left tackle in this league. If you're in the training room, if you're in the ice tub, if you're in rehab, like you need to be out on the field. And for Becton, let's be honest, and these are the facts. He's played less than 50% of the potential snaps he could have played in his first 2 years in the NFL. And unfortunately, just looking at track records, usually players that get hurt early and have injury issues early in their career, it's really hard to find players that all of a sudden put it together, stay healthy for the remainder of their career. And I hope Becton bucks that trend, but I'm just being honest. Did you see Wayne Kerbeck with Robbie Sabo? He was commenting that one of the things why Becton went to right tackle was to take pressure off his injured way. I found that to be an interesting take. And I mean, that is an interesting take too, because if memory serves, now I haven't. Let's see. You're missing 2 pictures on your wall. Thanks, old dude. I appreciate that. But I'll get to Daquan's question in a second. Sorry I skipped that, but I'll get back to that in a second. If memory serves, guys, maybe you can help me out. I believe it was Becton's right leg. Was it the left? No, it was the left leg that got hurt because that does make sense too. Where if it's the outside leg where you're really kicking out, maybe that will help too. We'll see. I mean, that is an interesting theory. I feel like a lot of it too is just to take some of the pressure off of him, take some of the wear of going against the team's best pass rusher every passing play, and also to position too. Like we forget, Makai really only played left tackle for 1 year at Louisville. He really played a lot of the right tackle position. So it's a position where, yeah, he's going back to right tackle, but it's a position that he has played before. How do you feel about the edge rushers? I feel like we're a lot better than previous years, but with Lawson coming back and JJ being drafted, it's not a lot of talk about the edge rushers yet. Any concerns? Daquan, it's still early in the training camp, and I do wonder. One of the things that a lot of people have noticed is the Jets have been going a lot lighter in practice. Part of me thinks that they're going to take it really easy with the edge rushers because we've seen it around camps. I mean, even today for the Buccaneers, Ryan Jensen, their amazing center, was carted off with a major knee injury, and this is day 2 of training camp. So a part of me also feels like maybe Sal is just taking it easy with these edge rushers and really would say, look, I'll take the chance of maybe them not developing as quickly as I thought, or maybe being a little rusty coming into the season, but I want them all healthy. Because like we were watching the Jets last year, I mean, just remember when they were coming out of camp, they were already starting to have major issues with the injuries on this team. And I think Salah wants to go into the season being as healthy as possible. But I still think it's way too early with the concerns. It's still really early in the camp. It's a lot of 7-on-7, a lot of 11-11. And really, they're not allowed to hit the quarterback. So you're not allowed to touch the quarterback right now. You really, I would look more at the preseason games, like with the pass rush when they're really turned loose. So I don't think it's too big of a concern yet. Fant signing in 2020 had the same energy as the recent Rife signing with the Bears. Like you said, the gamble just hasn't paid off big time. I kind of disagree because Rife to me, like Fant, they were different. Rife is in his 30s. Rife to me is at best an average tackle. Now, Fant was a little unknown because at most we thought he was going to be almost a switch tackle and that they were spending a lot of money on a switch tackle. But I think it was a gamble too because you're also talking about a younger player who was a really good young player that really hadn't got an opportunity with the Seattle Seahawks, and he got an opportunity with the Jets. He took the most advantage of it. The moral of the story is don't listen to big media hypes like Boomer Science and tell us that Beckham will get cut. Nick, like I agree with you on that one. Nick, like when I did a whole thing when that came out, I'm like, look, I've been critical of Makai Becton's weight, but I'm not one of these people like, oh, the Jets are going to trade him. The Jets are going to cut him. Like I kept seeing those articles out. I'm like, they're not trading or cutting Makai Becton. Like for the love of God, like that's just that to me is clickbait. That to me is like, oh, like they're getting rid of him. They're, I'm like, no, they're not. The front office has invested too much in Makai Becton, and let's be frank, there's not better options out there. If Makai Becton isn't playing for the Jets, they don't have a good backup option. It's not like there's a great free agent option out there where you're like, oh, okay, this guy is a Morgan Moses. We'll plug and play him. So uh we have to improve run defense too. How do you think we're looking with that? I don't know how we have in the middle besides Quinn. Well, to me, it's going to be really interesting. And one of the things I wanted to do, and I think I'm going to do this Monday or Tuesday, and you guys can tell me the chat if you want this, is the 5 most important Jets to watch at camp. Now, I'll give you a little bit of a spoiler with one of them right now. And when I'm talking about this list, it's not the obvious. Like the obvious is Zach Wilson. We know Zach Wilson. Like he's someone important. That's someone to develop. But there's certain positions in key positions on this team where I'm interested to see how the team is doing. And if that player works out, it really helps the Jet. If the player doesn't work out, the Jets could be in a lot of trouble. One of them to me is Jonathan Marshall, the defensive tackle that they drafted in the previous draft, because when they didn't bring back Fatukasi, and I agree that they shouldn't have because he got paid a lot of money from Jacksonville. And I know the Jets have cap space, but you don't want to be paying for a 2-down player that much money. But now the problem is they were not a good run defense with Fatukasi, who was a really good run defender. Now all of a sudden, like you look at the guys that they've even brought in this offseason, they've brought in some really good pass rushers. And actually, there's a pass rusher that's on the market now that I'm going to talk about in a minute. But Solomon Thomas, they've brought in. He can play inside. He's okay against the run. Sheldon Rankins is a pass rushing defensive tackle. He's not really great against the run. I mean, arguably, the best run defender is Quinnen Williams, and I would say he's a better pass rusher than he is a run defender. So really at this point, Jonathan Marshall is a crucial player for this team because if he can prove he can be a run stopper, that really helps this Jet team. That really helps this Jet team in terms of addressing a key need. The big problem is if he's not working out, the Jets, I believe, are going to be aggressive in finding a defensive tackle. I believe they're going to be aggressive looking for a run stopping defensive tackle. Maybe they're hoping that a team that's transitioning to a 4-3 defense is going to move on from a nose tackle that somehow gets out there. Maybe they can pick him up. And like, I know linebacker, I did a poll earlier this week on the channel. Again, guys, thank you so much for doing that. Really appreciate it. And really love the feedback. But like one of the questions I asked was, what position do you still think the Jets need to address? And 46% of you said linebacker, 42% offensive line, 8% defensive tackle, 4% said safety. And I would argue that I would put O-line and D-line ahead of linebacker. Like I would put defensive tackle right now against linebacker because I don't think the Jets have a great run stopper right now. I really do think that the Jets need to invest in a good run stopping defensive tackle, someone that can plug the middle, someone that can plug up on third and short. If Jonathan Marshall can do that, that makes it a lot easier. But if he can't, then the big question becomes, who do they go out and get? Who do they go out there and grab? Who are your top 8 linemen that make the team? I think that's too early, Braden. A lot of it's also going to be the fit. And I do wonder, are the Jets going to add pieces? Because that's actually a great segue into the next session. Was one of the players that I've kind of been hinting at for the Jets to look at this offseason just became available. And that's D Ford. D Ford was cut by the 49ers yesterday. And I do wonder, because Salah was there and Ulbrich was there when D Ford was there. And D Ford is a dynamic edge rusher. He's a dynamic speed rusher. He's a player that really is a luxury, but he's also a player that when you have him on the field can be a big difference maker. And I mean, the Jets have a lot of good power rushers. They have guys like John Franklin Myers, Quinnen Williams, and I would even say Carl Lawson's even a little bit more of a power rusher than a speed rusher. The Jets maybe don't have that dynamic burst to speed up the edge. So now that D Ford is sitting out there, now also comes down to D Ford. Does he want to play with a contending team? Does he care about trying to compete for a Super Bowl? If that's the case, that eliminates the Jets. But if he's just looking to make a roster and play somewhere, do the Jets look at D Ford? Is that a player that the Jets could also bring into this mix? Because you're talking about a dynamic speed rusher that's played under Saleh, that's had success under Robert Saleh. It will be very intriguing to see what the Jets will do. And now I understand that he's 31 years old, that the 49ers are disappointed with him, but the Jets can take a shot at him. I mean, they cut him on that $85 million extension, which was a crazy one. And look, I get it. He's had injury issues the last 3 years, but they can somehow check him out if his medical's clear and the Jets feel like he can be a good edge rusher or an edge rusher that's a situational pass rusher. Because again, he's not going to be a full-time pass rusher, but a situational rusher, I would look at it. If I'm the Jets, I would explore any opportunity to make this team. It's also funny too when you say the top 8 linemen. I'm not even sure the top 8 will make it. A lot of it's going to depend on how Saleh and Ulbrich want to construct this team. Do they want a veteran presence for some of these young guys? And that's the case, then maybe Vinny Curry gets the nod over someone. If they're looking for just youth and dynamic players, maybe that means like a Martin or someone makes this roster over Curry. I mean, there's a lot of moving parts. And again, we have to see what the health status is. If, God forbid, one of these players gets nicked up and has to mix a couple of weeks, then that opens up an opportunity. You can put them on the short-term IR. That opens up a roster spot for 4 weeks, and then you cross that bridge when you get to it after the 4-week period. But I just have a feeling like we're going to have to wait a little bit longer in camp to see who's really performing, and also to see who's going out there. I'm just checking really right now on social media, just making sure there's nothing breaking. But I do know the big story today in football is Ryan Jensen basically carted off the field, which is not good for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. But another interesting player, for not coming, too many negatives. Age, injury doesn't improve the team enough to offset it. I do think if they feel he's healthy, it could be someone that they could look at. I do think Ford is a player, like if he's right, could be a nice addition, but we'll have to see. And I'm just saying, don't rule that out. Because of the connection and because of the history, do not rule that out. But one other player that's looked really good too, and this will be a fascinating camp, is Denzel Mims. Denzel Mims apparently came out looking great, making dynamic catches, stretching the field yesterday, looking really great in practice, and really was one of the story points of training camp yesterday. And I'm fascinated to see what happens with Denzel Mims, because I still believe that at the end of camp, Denzel Mims is going to be on another team. The biggest problem is going to be if he's really looking this good, what the Jets do with him, because the Jets already have 4 receivers pretty much entrenched on this roster. They're not going anywhere. Corey Davis is not going anywhere. Elijah Moore, Garrett Wilson, And you also have Braxton Berrios. And Berrios is pretty much entrenched on this roster for multiple reasons. One, he's a good slot receiver. He's a bit of an ascending player, a clubhouse favorite, but also he's a Pro Bowl kick returner. And that's hard to find. So the versatility that Berrios gives the Jets basically means he's someone that they're not going to get rid of. So now the question is with Denzel Mims, is it worth him to keep him as the fifth or sixth receiver on a roster when he doesn't really do special teams? Or do you give it to a guy like Jeff Smith who can play special teams? So I'm really curious to see what happens with Mims. Uh, Need at least one big receiver. I think the Jets should keep him. I believe the Jets will keep Denzel Mims. Where do you get a 6'3" guy who can catch 50 balls? And it's a good point, Nick and Daquan. It's a really good point. And a part of me feels like I keep seeing this statement like the Jets are going to carry 5 receivers. The Jets are going to carry 5 receivers. I believe the Jets are probably going to carry 6 receivers if I had to guess. Carry 3 tight ends, 6 receivers. And I know that would be hard to carry 6 receivers, especially because they primarily do a lot of just 3 receiver sets. But this will be curious too. And the other question with Mims that will become is if he does have a great camp, what does the team offer? If they offer you a decent draft pick, is it something that the Jets value the draft pick over Mims? Could they go out and get an additional piece with part of it? Like, could it be a good backup young offensive lineman that they feel could eventually be a starter? Could it be a pass rusher, a defensive tackle? Like, I just don't think you can roll out the Mims situation. Surely Mims can be coached to play specials. See, that's the thing. With Mims, I'm not sure. I don't know if he doesn't want to play special teams or just can't do special teams, but there's just something with him. I'm not sure what it is, but that I've heard that he's just not a good fit on special teams. I agree. You should always keep it. Yeah, 6 receivers solid in case of injury. I feel like the Jets, if you had to ask me today, I think you keep Mims because of the injuries. I mean, we saw it last year. The Jets had a rash of injuries. He's still at the wide receiver position. I think there was one game where the top 3 were fully healthy for one game. That was the London game. But the thing with Mims that I do also wonder too is because of his personality, because of the way he was working last year, because he didn't really appear to be working as hard last year. Not that the coaching staff has written him off, but are they more open to moving on from him because they have seen him work in that session? Like, I do. It's a good question. Like, does that something that they still don't forget about Mims? And let's be honest, Mims last year had opportunities. I mean, when Mims got on the field last year, when we were screaming as a Jets fandom, play Denzel Mims, release Denzel Mims. The 2 games we got Denzel Mims, his biggest impact was 2 penalties against the Jets than what he did on the field. So it does tell me that there's something a little bit off. Maybe it's just last year. Maybe this year he's put it all together and is working in the system. But last year, I mean, we tend to forget there was that 2-game stretch where he had those killer offensive penalties, including one where he couldn't line up in the right spot. And it tells you what they felt about Denzel Mims when, like, we were begging for a wide receiver. I mean, the last game of the season in Buffalo, who was it? They were throwing to Tariq Black more than Denzel Mims. I mean, it just tells me what they feel about him. Michael Clemens working inside OTAs, that actually wouldn't be a bad place for Clemens because, again, he's a big dude. Like, he's closer to 280 pounds. I mean, so I'm interested in seeing he's a dynamic player. If they can get him on the field, that could be an interesting place. Any hope for linebackers drafted last year halfway decent? That's a good point, BK. I actually think there is. I really liked Hamza, especially last year in training camp. Now, the problem with both of them is at crucial times they both got injured. And right when they were starting to look like they were getting some development, they had those big injuries. And a lot of the times when they were out on the field, then without CJ Mosley or their veteran linebacker, it was rough. But both of them have the athleticism, Sherwood and Hamza, to be dynamic players. And don't forget, too, they're only going to usually play with two linebackers on the field, so they'll only be used in sub packages, really. But I do think there's a lot of hope. And this coaching staff, I do think, believes there's hope because, again, I always say actions speak louder than words. If they really believe that these two guys couldn't play in the NFL and these two guys really didn't belong on this roster, they would have gone out in free agency. They would have gone out in the draft and tried to address those positions, and they haven't so far. Now, could that change? Could a linebacker be cut that we don't expect? Could someone get out there on the free agent market that we don't expect? Could some veteran be cut from a team because of a cap situation? Could some young player be cut just because of a scheme fit and be added to the Jets? Those are all possibilities too. There's a lot of moving parts this time of year, but I do think the Jets staff is higher on their linebacking choices from last year than most of the fan bases, because I know a lot of, like, trust me, I've seen it in the comments and I've also seen it in the polls. Like, everyone wants linebacker, and it just seems like the Jets are like, we feel we're okay at linebacker right now. Clemens on specials is going to be fun. Yeah, I mean, I think his was the most noble rival at train camp, showing up shirtless, showing off the physique. I'll tell you, like, I think he's going to be a favorite of this coaching staff really quickly. I remember that terrible in terms of last year. This is Mims stays until he plays himself off the team. Coaches keep an open mind. And I think they are keeping an open mind, old dude. Like, you look too, Salah has praised Mims. He's praised him for the shape he's gotten into this year. And this also, too, will be an interesting year because I'm going to kind of pair two of these guys together. And I know it's not the perfect pairing, but with Denzel Mims and a bit of Ashton Davis, I mean, both of these guys are facing crucial year threes, but both of them are very similar in the fact that I don't think that they've also been developed correctly, because don't forget, like, especially with Mims gets drafted in 2020. It was something where I think he was injured in the preseason or something, or injured early, so he had to miss some reps. So he doesn't get a lot of extra practice. And it was also the offseason with COVID. So you didn't have the OTAs, you didn't have the extended mini camp. So that's some valuable time that both of those guys missed. You come into a crucial year two with a fully new coaching staff, a fully new scheme, and really a scheme that you're not a fit to. You were someone that fit the old scheme better than the new scheme. Now, you could still work in the new scheme, but it's a lot to take in. It's also a very complicated offense. And on top of that, he had the serious food poisoning last offseason where he lost all that weight, came to camp not in the best shape. And I just feel like he got behind the eight ball. And maybe it was because he saw the writing on the wall early. Maybe it's because he just didn't have the confidence last year. Maybe that played into it, but it just did not break right for Mims last year. Now, really, this is the first full healthy offseason that Denzel Mims has had in his entire NFL career, where he hasn't had an illness that has really become that was a deterrent. It's an offseason where he's been able to fully participate in the workouts. It's an offseason where he's had to fully work with his quarterback. So this really could be a big jumping point for Mims potentially, because this is the first offseason where everything has worked for him to get to this year. So with old dude, it could be I agree with that. It could be a situation too where I do believe that if everything breaks right, Mims could easily be on this team. But I do wonder if this team, a lot can happen. If this team's fully healthy and we come to the end of camp and Elijah Moore looks great and Garrett Wilson looks great and even Corey Davis looks really good, it's going to be hard to get reps. And you wonder the Jets, and this is the hard thing about the NFL where, yeah, roster construction is so important because you know who the top guys are, but then piecing together the 53 is the most difficult job in sports because and we see it every year, there's a lot of good players that get cut just simply because the team needs to include some special teamers. They need to include players that are more versatile. They need to include players like you see it a lot, especially in secondary. I think Jason Pinnock is a player who I really like. Now, I think he could be a potential starter in 2023. But for me, Pinnock's going to make this team because he can play corner, he can play safety. Getting guys like that can play multiple positions adds value because then it helps fill out the depth chart. So I'm really curious to see how that all plays out. Does DQ Thomas and Bam Knight have a good chance to make this team? Well, Braden, I think kind of a two-part question where it's, do they make the team on the active roster or do they make the team on the practice squad? I really think that Knight can make this team on the practice squad and DQ Thomas because, again, you look right now, the Jets have an interesting situation with the running back position. Do they carry into game day? Do they carry 3 running backs and a fullback? Do they carry 4 running backs and a fullback and maybe only 3 tight ends? Do they try to do like a hybrid, like 4th tight end or the 3rd tight end as the fullback and do 4 running backs? Like, it's going to be interesting, like, to see how many running backs the Jets want to employ on Sunday. If they feel comfortable with 3, then they're not going to make this roster because the Jets already have 3, their top 3. They have, barring injury, they have Breece Hall, Michael Carter, and Tevin Coleman. That's the top 3 right now. So, but the Jets look to carry a 4th running back, sure, but also could that 4th running back, is it a hybrid running back fullback potentially? So there's a lot that you have to consider with what they're putting together for the roster on game day, but that doesn't mean they won't be a part of the team. I could see them easily being on the practice squad. And if one of the running backs has to miss a week or 2, because injuries always happen in the NFL. And, like, let's be frank, especially for running backs, it is incredibly rare for a running back to play in all 17 games now. And that's the other thing too. Like, the 17-game schedule is the biggest change in the NFL. I mean, it doesn't sound like a big deal, but it is a big deal. It's a full other game that these players have to go out there and get physically beaten up, go out there and get hit. So it does take some mileage off guys. And I do wonder how many. So, great question. So I hope I understood that, Braden, where to me, it's a yes and no. I don't think they'll be on the 53, but I do think they'll be on the practice squad and be on that kind of what I call like the taxi club, where they're like the first, there's like 5 players on every team where they're on the practice squad, but basically they're ready to jump in at the first injury. Like, there's 1 receiver, usually 1 running back, potentially like a defensive lineman or an offensive lineman to jump up. Now, the other big question too is with Mike White. Now, I think Mike White could be on this team, but is Mike White going to be on the 53? I think it's going to be hard. I do wonder if he's going to be on the practice squad this year. Because do the Jets really want to risk carrying a 3rd quarterback and risk losing a key position player on the roster? That's always something you have to keep in count. And Mims makes a team, he'll be the 8th or 9th option, so he's going to have to make the most of it. I guess what Braden you're considering is the tight ends. And I mean, you're not wrong. That's the other thing too, which I wonder about the wide receiving room that you bring up, that is an interesting point too, is last year the Jets went with 3 wide receivers a lot. But did they go with that because that's the scheme, or did they go with that because they didn't have really any tight ends to throw to? Now they have 2 tight ends. And look, Jeremy Rucker, it's a player I really love. I'm a little concerned about the foot injury that he's coming back from, but I don't necessarily think he'll be a big impact player this year, but I do think he can develop into a very good tight end. But even so, the Jets now at least have 2 very good tight ends, where you wonder, because they have these tight ends now, does that impact the roster construction and how they use the receivers? Will they do more 2 receiver sets? Will they limit the 4 receiver sets to more 3 receiver sets? So that's something that also has to come into play. And with Mims, and like you said, if Mims is the 8th or 9th option on the team, and a team comes to you and offers you a high 4th round pick for Denzel Mims, for someone that you, in a perfect world, are not going to play because your team's fully healthy, you might consider it. Or if, like, let's say a team, just drawing one off the top of my head, let's say a team like the Eagles. The Eagles have a lot of good offensive linemen and young offensive linemen. If one of their receivers goes down early in camp, could Joe Douglas give him a call and basically try to trade for a young offensive lineman? Not even the start for the Jets, but someone so they have more offensive line depth in case there's an injury. That could be a potential move that they could do. I mean, we've seen them also do a lot of moves with San Francisco. Could there be a pass rusher out there that maybe San Francisco doesn't value as much anymore, but the Jets have a higher value on the Denzel Mims? And there's a lot to play in there. Nick Chapman, love Jason Pinnock, and I think you mean JD Reed, not JR Reed. Good old JR is a beast. Great free agent pickup. No, I love Reed. I personally, I think what the Jets are going to do too. Personally, I think is a lot of what the Jets are going to do is make DJ Reed the number one quarter and do the Sauce as the number two. So Sauce has to face the team's number one. He can face the team's number two and hopefully be able to lock them down a bit. Where you look at DJ Reed, he can play against the number one. I do think he's a really good and underrated corner. I'm really excited to see what he does. And it's a good young veteran. And I still think Reed's an ascending player. I do think Reed can even get better. Rich, I'm late. What I miss? Talking about Makai Bechten being in shape. Makai Bechten moving to the right tackle position. Fant moving to the left tackle position. The ramifications of that for a possible extension. How even though I'm really excited to see Becton and it's great to see him in shape, need to see him get through the camp, and also still a little bit of concern because again, it's nice that there's no question about who the left and right tackle is, but does tell you maybe the Jets aren't as high on Becton as you think with him moving to right tackle. And I do believe you're going to see Fant get extended at some point this offseason and basically train camp. So I hope that was a quick Spark Notes version of what we talked about today. How about Perrine making the 53? Sal mentioned him doing one OTAs, probably doubtful. I don't think Perrine's making the roster. I mean, even last year, when you had all the running back injuries, Perrine barely got on the field. Because I'm trying to think like who are some of the running backs that got in there. Because don't forget too, the Jets also have Ty Johnson. Ty Johnson's someone that they really liked, and he's kind of the fourth running back right now. Look, I just don't think he's going to make it. Again, was drafted by for the Adam Gase scheme. I just don't see him making it. And look, running back there's so many running backs even out on the free agent market or on practice squads. Like even if you lose Perrine, I don't think it's the biggest end in the world. Impressed with the DJ Reed and Whitehead signings. Like I really am excited to see Whitehead. I think Whitehead. I mean, that's one thing I loved about the Jets free agency. They got good ascending players and good young players. I want to see the Jets go 2-2 against the AFC North that terrible loss streak to division rivals against the Dolphins. No more 1-5 starts, please. It's going to be tough. I mean, the one advantage that the Jets have at least now in the first four games is, Deshaun Watson isn't going to play because it's week 2 against the Browns. And you just know that the Browns, that he's probably not going to be their quarterback. And again, the Browns are still a great team, but it's going to be interesting with their quarterback situation. The only thing you worry about is if the Panthers beat them badly, are they going to be pissed about that in a revenge game? The other thing too is the AFC North is a challenge, but the two things that I'm really curious to see are number one, the Ravens, because the Ravens, I think the Ravens are an unbelievable team. But there's two reasons I think the Jets have a decent shot against them. Now, the thing that hurts the Jets too is they have so many new pieces on this team that's going to take a while to gel. But the thing that I'm a little bit worried about with the Ravens is right now, they've went through a weird offseason where they've had an unbelievable draft. I think they have a great roster, but they did lose their number one playmaker. They haven't added a lot of playmakers on the outside. And look, Lamar Jackson is probably the biggest playmaker in the NFL in terms of what he can do at the quarterback position. But don't forget, too, he's still, even though he's out practicing, he still doesn't have that new contract. And I do wonder if that contract doesn't get resolved by the first week, will that become a big distraction for this team? Because, I mean, you're already seeing, think about it. Kyler Murray got paid, and they had to put that that clause in the contract where he had to study for 4 hours a night. So if you're Lamar Jackson, you're sitting there going, let me get this straight, Baltimore. I've gotten you to the playoffs. I have the best winning record of the quarterbacks in my class. I've won an MVP, but Kyler Murray, who they have to put a clause to make him stay in the contract, has gotten paid. And oh, by the way, Deshaun Watson got played. He hasn't played a year of football and has also had multiple legal issues. He's gotten paid, but I still can't get a bag. Okay. And then the other thing too with the AFC North is the big news out of Cincinnati, which is Joe Burrow having the surgery for what was it, his appendix, I believe. But I wonder how that's going to impact him coming into his second year, and I mean his third year. Will he get a little? He's still a great player, but the other thing too with this Bengal team, I do think they've added a lot of good pieces on this Bengal team. They obviously have amazing weapons, but let's also be honest. I mean, the Jets also beat them last year, and they also are a team that I don't think they have a good offensive line. So I don't think 2-2's out of the question. I mean, the bare minimum is they got to go 1-3 in the first 4 games. They cannot go 1-4. Jets still have Ty Johnson. Wow. Sometimes players are so good in high school and college, they never had to push themselves. But then in the NFL, they have to fish or cut bait. Mims may be one of those players. Ty Johnson dropped a lot of crucial passes. I like Perrine over him, but ultimately, I think they both miss out. Perrine does offer more of the power game, which the Jets could use. Like, they could use a short back, like a short down back, but don't forget, too, they've added a lot of undrafted. I think they've added 3 running backs in the undrafted free agency pool. So, I mean, there's going to be a stable running back. So, they're going to have their choice. Agree, Brazen, now that Breece Hall is number 1. Yeah, Nick, he's going to be awesome, man. Do not sleep on Ty Johnson. Had 5 total drops last year, 3 in 1 game. Compare stats to Michael Carter. I do think that Ty Johnson too, he's got that explosiveness in his game. Like, he can make a big play down the field, and that's another reason why the Jets do love him and could be a reason why he still makes this roster. I mean, this is another fun thing where, if we're being honest with Jet fans, where I think this is really a great sign for this organization, where we're actually debating who can make this roster, and they have talent that you're worried about potentially losing or cutting. I mean, just the last couple of seasons for this team, we were just trying to figure out, like, who's going to make the 53 in terms of, like, do they have enough good pieces to make the 53? Now, at a couple positions, you're like, okay, they have so much good depth and now some good talent that maybe some of these guys can't even make the team because they've added so many good pieces, which to me is exciting and is telling you that they're building this roster in a good way. I mean, you look right now, like, there's a lot of legit competition in terms of who's going to make this roster. This is going to be a lot of fun, and for as a Jet fan, you should be excited about this because how often have we come into training camp looking like, okay, the top 2 receivers look good, but if one of them goes down, 3, 4, 5 look absolutely god awful, and that's not the case this year. Same thing with the tight end position, the corner position, the running back position. It to me is just a really good time, and it's really encouraging that you're looking at the depth this team has, and you're going, oh, okay, like, man, we might have to cut a decent player here. Like, when was the last time the Jets, you're like, okay, and like, do we have even enough decent players on the roster? So I do think that is really good. I mean, the pass rush doing a lot better today. Lots of pressure from the D line in practice today. But you look like the offense did really well yesterday. Defense did well today. Now, again, it's tough because you don't know if today they're working on plays that are more down the field. You're not sure if they're working on plays like where they're trying to hold the ball a little bit more. So it will be interesting. But I mean, Bryce Huff, looking really good so far in camp. He's someone that I really love as a Jet player. I think he's a really good a good player, but you look right now like this Jets pass rush. Like the one thing you hope in training camp is if they're really dominating this offense, you really hope they're a great unit, but you also want your quarterback to develop. Love how Jody and his staff are saying this team. Can't agree with you more. I think they've done an unbelievable job, and I, like I would say too, like even if we get to a point this year where if the Jets look really good, but Zach Wilson doesn't look like the answer, I would still keep Joe Douglas in charge because I do think he's done an unbelievable job putting this roster together, and he's done an unbelievable job of really building. Like you look at where the Jets were when he started to where they are now. I mean, it is completely night and day. Completely night and day. So I do have to give the Jets and him a lot of credit for that. BK, we can really deep into a lot of position groups and still be okay if we get absurd injury luck, especially D line, secondary. The of course quarterbacks in one position. I don't think you can do that, obviously, but I mean, really outside of the tackle position, there isn't a lot of wow. The Jets are incredibly thin there, but um, it will be interesting too. Like Brees Hall had a really good day today, really showing off the explosiveness that he had. And look, you're seeing a lot of guys at this camp. And Garrett Wilson had some good catches today. Uh, but this pass rush, I do think it's going to be very, very interesting to see how this pass rush works. Like, I do think this Jet pass rush is going to be great, but they also have to stop the run. They have to get teams into the third and long situations. They have to get teams into these passing situations. Of course, missed this Sirius XFL radio, Joe Douglas on talking about Zach Wilson. His confidence never sways. His work ethic never does. I mean, you talk about a guy who's obsessed with football, and really, that's what you want with your football players, of course. And like that's the one thing about Zach. Like you cannot question Zach Wilson's work ethic. You know he's going to go out there and give 100%. Like I really appreciate the way he's handled this offseason. Uh, Also, so other ones too. Zach Wilson on Elijah on Garrett Wilson. He's going to be a stud, but I think you see the development Elijah Moore went through. Um, you look to like Becton, of course. The big one was the big talking point from Sal yesterday was the work he put in. And look, I have to give Becton credit. He looks in great shape coming to camp this year. And look, it'll be interesting. Like if he can make that transition quickly to the right tackle position, this offensive line can be scary, but it all comes down to health. Like health is the thing it's the thing we never talk about in the NFL, but it really is the most important team. Like you never see a team in the Super Bowl with a ton of injuries. I mean, they might have a couple key injuries, but for the most part, most of their team is intact. So, I mean, that's going to be the big thing for this Jet team. And that's the biggest thing for me this whole train camp is just get to the regular season healthy. Get to the regular season healthy, your big players healthy, and even the rookies, like just have them get the reps in camp. They don't have to get the most crazy reps or an insane amount of reps, but they just have consistency with their reps. Excited for this team is an understatement. All right. Excited too. Braden NZL, has McDermott hit his ceiling yet? I'm not comfortable with him playing more a couple games if Fant Becton go down, or will Doga get the nod over him? Uh, how do good teams avoid injuries? It's just luck. Addition, I think it is a bit of luck. I also think it's the way that they handle practices. I think one of the reasons the Rams have been good is they've had a lot of they've done a really good light practice. You see a lot of teams starting to do that, but it's luck. It's also conditioning. I know the Jets have also invested, I believe, heavily in a new training group. So we'll see how that goes this year too. And part of me also thinks it might be the turf at MetLife. Maybe Jets can go back to grass. That's just me personally. Has Madurs his ceiling yet? I believe so. The big question for me though, from Braden, that's a good question with the Doga. One player I'm really going to watch intently in this preseason and the training camp is their fourth round pick, Max Mitchell, because if he looks like he's not swimming and is not overwhelmed, I think he could be the swing tackle. Again, I think ideally Jets never want him on the field this year. This is a redshirt year, but if he looks like he can handle it and he's not swimming and looked overwhelmed, like I think he gets knocked because I don't think Doga or McDermott are good. I really don't. I think if you had to start him for a game or two, fine. But if you had to start him for more than a game or two, that's not good. What do you think, Carl Lawson? Over under 6 sacks? I would go over 6, but under 10. I'm really curious to see how he looks early in the season, but I'm also curious too where I don't think you're going to see the Jets get a guy with you're not going to get a guy with like 15, 14 sacks because Sal's even said he wants the guys playing 65 to 70% of the snaps. He's not going to put them out there. He's going to heavily rotate. So I think you'll see even like guys like Quinton Williams, like he might not get double digit sacks, but that's mostly because he's not out there every single play. So I just do think so. I just think that it's a situation too where the sack numbers for the Jets, if they're low, I'd bang the over, but double digits with this team's going to be hard just because there's going to be so much rotation. And part of the reason that they have so much depth is so they can get all these guys out there. And with all this depth that they now have acquired, it does mean that the Jets can heavily rotate. It means they can get some fresh bodies in there. So it doesn't mean they're going to have to put guys out there for as many snaps. So I do think for Nick, I'm guessing is that something on FanDuel right now? You trying to bang the over or the under for the season, trying to make a bet early right now? Is that what it is, Nick? Looking for some betting advice. Big Day, we need OT depth. You're preaching to the choir. Like if you're just joining us, like if you're new to the channel, again, make sure to subscribe. But like I've been banging the offensive line. Like I was one of the guys in my mock drafts. I had Icky going at number 4 to the Jets. I'm like, bang the offensive line, bang the OT drum. But the Jets I do think are going to sign a veteran tackle. I just think they're waiting to see which ones are still out there. A part of me thinks they're really looking at which ones get cut. Like, is there a veteran that will get cut in camp or an offensive lineman that can get cut because of a cap reason, because of a young player fitting in? That to me is where the Jets are looking right now. And I think that's one of the reasons that they haven't. Good show. Got to go upgrade the pictures. I'm guessing the pictures in the background. Okay. Jets Online was dragged today in practice. It's Snoopy. Again, it's only the second day in camp. And you also, it's hard too because you like offensive line, it's all about chemistry. Think about it this way. You only have 2 guys this year that are playing the same position on this line as last year. Now, again, you still have Elijah Vera Tucker there, but he's moving to right guard. You have Lakin Tomlinson, who's new to this team. And now you have Makai Bechten at the right tackle position. So it's going to take some adjustment. And it's a lot easier for D-line and camp where it's just easy. It's go get the football, go get the quarterback. Where the offensive line, it's more choreography. It's more learning about what the guy next to you can do. It's more about chemistry. So I do think that's something that you have to look at too. Hey, thanks, Nimberg. Get to sleep for him over here and work in a few hours. Jesus, really appreciate your commentary, dude. Brandon, yeah, you gotta get some sleep. Where are you now at 4 a.m.? You in the I'm trying to think 4 a.m. Wow. I'm trying to guess where that is right now. It's not the West Coast. Is that like Hawaii or something? That's crazy. But yeah, I really appreciate it, Braden. Make sure to keep coming. Always put the comments in the chat. Love to hear from you. It's Snoopy. Becton being beat like a drum. I mean, we'll see. We'll see. And that's the thing with Becton. Like again, like I started the show off Snoopy. I know you're probably a little bit late to the party, but I said like I'm really happy Becton's in unbelievable shape. I think it's great that he showed up in great shape, but we're going to see it on the field. Like, is he in good playing shape on the field? New Zealand. Brain, I'm gonna have to pick your brain, man, because like New Zealand is one of the places I need to visit in my life. So I'm gonna need you to be my tour guide whenever I come down there to New Zealand, Braden. So I gotta show me around all the good sites down there. So yeah, I mean, we give you everything. We give you football, we give you geography, only here on Rich Sports Talk. We give you a wide variety of content and education, guys. But and Snoopy too, like going back to your point with Makai, still learning the right tackle, still coming back from that injury. Right now, would I be concerned? No, but preseason game 1 or 2, this still happening. I would be concerned. Zach seems to have a connection with Moore now. A lot of big plays. Again, look, like Moore was his go-to guy last year. I think he's a dynamic playmaker, and I do think you're going to see a lot more of Moore early in the season, especially. Garrett Wilson's going to be great, but don't be surprised if he comes out of the gate a little slow because, again, he's a rookie. He's still got to get that rapport, and I do think Elijah Moore will get a little bit underrated from defenses because again, Corey Davis will be the big receiver on the outside, so they'll give him attention. Garrett Wilson's obviously a top 10 pick, so he'll get attention. So Elijah Moore will kind of be like, again, he's a second round pick, a little bit undersized. I think he's going to be a little bit overlooked from the defensive schematic point, which again, I think is a little bit crazy, but so that could also play in for his advantage as well. If Mims lights up camp, do you trade him for a 6th-round draft pick or hold on to Corey Davis? If I'm only getting a 6th-round draft pick, I would hold him. If you could get a 4th or a 5th, I'd consider it. A 6th-round pick, basically, like I wouldn't do that. If I get a little bit higher, I think if the Jets get a 4th, they're doing it. If they can get a conditional 5th, where if Mims, to me, it's going to be a conditional trade. Like it'll be something like if Mims plays like a 50% of the snaps, kind of like that Carson Wentz trade a year ago, then it gets bumped up around. So I think that will also be in play as well. Like for the Jets, I think it'll be one of those picks where it's like, yeah, it could be, it's a 5th, but if he plays 60% of snap, it jumps up to a 4th-round pick. So I could see that also being in play as well for trade. I mean, you got to put sauce on Corey Davis. I mean, you got to put the 6'3" corner against the 6'3" receiver. You're not going to, give him the reps, getting him out there, put him on those big bodies. Let's see what Sauce can do, man. Nick Chaplin, you hold him, never trade him for a 6th-round pick. That's not enough, Big Daddy. No, I agree. Bryce Huff beat Becton on sacks today. And that's going to be tough for Becton, too, that frame is so massive and you think it's great, but especially against those really smaller, twitchier edge rushers, I've always wondered with Becton if he would be able to, especially the left tackle position. And I think you see why he's at right. I mean, Salas said yesterday he could see Becton playing left tackle in the future, but to me, this tells me they don't think he's a left tackle. And I do wonder if there's now a lot of disappointment upstairs. Like if Joe Douglas could admit to you, like, be honest, like, is he disappointed with this pick? Because again, the reason they drafted Becton over Wirfs was because they believed Becton was going to be a left tackle. They felt Wirfs couldn't be a left tackle, but he could be an elite right tackle. So the fact now is that you have Becton playing the right tackle position. Look, he could be unbelievable at right tackle, but Tristan Wirfs has proven he's a Pro Bowl right tackle at this point. So I do wonder if the Jets now, looking back, are wondering, do they feel like they've been kind of burned by this? Because this is now a situation too. Like, look, again, Sal keeps telling me one thing, but his actions say another thing. Like he said, like we didn't even have a day. And he already said George Fant's left tackle. We assumed, I think a lot of us in the Jets fandom assumed this was going to be a competition. No, Fant's left tackle. Becton's right tackle. And the other thing too is if they really believe Becton can go back to left tackle, why would they be trying to get a Fant extension? And Lejay Douzable yesterday tweeted that he sees an extension for Fant coming soon. And look, he's got a lot of resources, especially around the Jets in that building. So I do think you're going to see a Fant extension before we get to the regular season. If I had to guess, some people are going to think the number's a little bit big, but again, it's a left tackle. And I think that's the reason Fant was holding out on the extension, because never forget, left tackles get a lot more money than right tackles. On average, they get 3 million more a year. So I think what you'll see is probably, if I had to guess, probably like 3 years, 45 million, maybe 48 million, but front loaded. So the first 2 years are guaranteed. Kind of, I call it the Joe Douglas special, like you saw with Corey Davis and Lawson. The first front year is guaranteed, third year you can get out of. So worse. Oh my God, that still hurts. Well, it does now in retrospect, because Becton's playing right tackle. If Becton was a great left tackle, or even a solid left tackle, it would have been fine. But you look to it, like that's the thing too. Like, if this staff was here when they were in that draft room, I'm pretty sure they would have picked Wirfs. Because to me, Wirfs is a little bit more athletic than Becton, but you just knew he was going to, with his athleticism, he was fit more for a guard or right tackle. Left tackle is so hard to play in this league. So, yep, Snoothy brought that up earlier in the show too. Jensen went down in training camp. I mean, that would be one thing great too, if the Jets had like a great backup center right now. Could they trade into the Bucks and maybe get something? But like, this is the thing too, is you need to stay healthy in camp. Like, you look already like this is day 2 of camp. This is day 2. Also some news today with Fant not in team drills, sitting out in team periods, is not contract related. So I think it's just him coming back slowly. Sal also about Becton. Human temps today played a role in Becton looking a little gassed at points today. He was able to get in through the entire practice without issues. Also, the defensive line has advantage over offensive line, but there are no pads and not to worry about days like that. So, like, again, I kind of agree with that. Becton, we'll have to see, like, can he consistently continue to develop throughout the camp? But I do think you're going to see Fant get extended. I really think you're going to see that coming sooner rather than later. But again, guys, I'm going to put a poll up on the channel later. Make sure you reach out. Like, I'm going to talk about the 5 most important Jets to watch in camp. Not like, they're a little bit under the radar. Like, I'm going to be honest with you. You're probably going to be like they're really not that big of a player. But in terms of the role they could potentially play on the Jets this year, I think that they're huge, and they're huge players to watch in camp. That's coming on Monday, but I'll also put a poll out there to see if that's the episode you want. But appreciate you guys as always. Excited to see what we got so far. More training camp content on the way here on Rich Sports Talk. So if you know any other Jets fans that want to join this community, have a place to talk about training camp, what their reactions, what they're seeing, how they feel the Jets are doing training camp, let them know about the channel. If you're joining us here after the live stream, make sure you subscribe so you don't miss any of our latest content. And thank you so much for joining us here today. Until next time, I'm Nolan Rich, and this is Rich Sports Talk. I'll see you next time.